Hello everyone, welcome to this course, and in this one we will be covering Introduction to Medical Parasitology. We will be talking about general terms that are used in parasitology. We will be discussing historical aspects. We will be discussing different parasites. Okay, so let's get started. So this is a part of the course where we'll be introducing medical parasitology. Okay, so let me write it down, parasitology. And that's the course that I've created, where we will be discussing a lot of key terms, a lot of interesting things about medical parasitology. So we'll start with the topic 1 in our medical parasitology course, which is key terms. Key terms, as well as we will be talking about the introduction of medical parasitology. That what are the important things that we need to understand. So let me write it down, medical parasitology. Parasitology. It is nothing but it's the study of parasites. So that's the point number 1. In this one, we study parasites. We study different kinds of parasites, right? And especially those parasites that are important for humans. Basically, those infect humans are the parasites we study in medical parasitology. And we also study in detail the biology of the parasite. And what is their life cycle, where they live, what they eat, all those things are covered. Next is transmission of the parasites also, that how these parasites, they are getting transferred. Next is development of the parasite. So parasite usually need host for their development. So we need to study what are the different stages of development in parasites. Next is what is the interaction of the parasite with the host system, especially the immune system. So that is also an important part. Next, you have two different important terms. So sub areas. One is protozoology, okay, protozoology, and the second one is helminthology. Helminthology. These are two sub branches of medical parasitology, where you have different categories of parasites. In protozoology, you have basically protozoas. So that is why the term came from this protozoology, right? And it's a single-celled organism, and you have different organelles. You have nucleus over there, and that is basically the protozoa. We'll study that in detail. Next, what you have is we'll study the life cycle of these particular organisms, and then we also study different stages like trophozoites. We study cysts. We study especially the intracellular survival also, because these are these are not acellular, these are single cell organisms, so they survive even inside the cell also, right? So that is also a very, very important part of this. Next, you have helminths. Helminths are nothing but they are a little bit larger organisms, multicellular parasites, and organized into tissues. They have organs, right? So they basically develop themselves into multicellular organisms. And in that, what you have is we have nematodes, we have next is cystodes, and we have trematodes. So different groups are there, and different parasites are there inside. What they cause is basically a mechanical obstruction. They cause nutrient, they cause several illness. They will cause damage to the host also. Okay. So now it's important for us to now move from the introduction to the historical aspects. So this is the image that I would show you. Different scientists, they worked in this area. The first one is Antony van Leeuwenhoek, who worked in the area of microbiology and worked on protozoa, because he invented the microscope. Initially, he was able to see microscopic organisms, especially the protozoa. He created the diagrams of those organisms. Next, we have a very important scientist who is Louis Pasteur. He worked around 1970s regarding the microbes that are responsible for different diseases, and experimentally also showed that. Next, we have another scientist, Patrick Manson, 1878, and he was the one who mentioned mosquito transmission as a vector of various diseases, right? So mosquito is a vector. So concept of vector came from here. Next is the scientist, which is very, very important contribution has been done by the scientist Alphonse Laveran, 1880. Malaria parasite is the focus of his work, and he showed that human blood has the malaria parasite. So let me write it down over here. Human blood because he was able to detect the parasite in the human blood. Next is Ronald Ross, 1897. He worked in the area of malaria, and he showed that mosquito is required for the complete transmission of the malaria parasite. So these are some of the important historical figures that we all need to know about parasitology. Next, now let's move on to the parasites, right? What are parasites? What are different types of parasites that are present and how we categorize them? Next is they live, one characteristic is they live on the host. So they basically rely on host, they damage the host, and they take nutrition from the host for their own survival. And various developmental stages like trophozoites, cysts, and so on are there in different types of hosts, right? So from here, let's talk about the types of parasites. We have different types of parasites. We have, for example, ectoparasites, endoparasites. So let's talk about first the ectoparasites. Let me write it down over here. Ectoparasites. The point that is very, very important here to make is the parasites. So I'll also show you the image, so it becomes very, very convenient also. The first one, that is the lice. They live on the surface, and that's the lice over here. Basically, a human hair, that is very, very important for this particular organism. Next, they do not have tissue invasion. They will not enter inside the tissue. That's why they are ecto. Ecto means outside. Next, you have and that's why it's known as infestation, not infection. The presence of ectoparasite is infestation. And next is you have examples. We talk about lice. So that's the lice over here, lives on human head. You have ticks. Then you have right over here is mite. So different parasites are there in ectoparasite category. Now let's move on to the next category, which is endoparasite, right? So after ectoparasite, which is basically not infection, it's infestation, let's talk about endoparasite. Endoparasites. And as the name indicates, endoparasites, they live inside the host tissue. So they live inside the host tissue. They will live inside the host cell even, or even organs. So that's important point regarding these endoparasites. Organs also, they can live inside the organs, they can live inside the cells also. And that is why it's known as infection. So the difference between infestation and infection should be clear. So usually they will have complex life cycle to understand. It's not like ectoparasite, very simple life cycle. If we talk about some of the examples for that, let me show you some images. Protozoa and helminths, the worms, helminths, right? So these are the examples of endoparasites. They go inside the cell, they go inside the organs. You have protozoa. These are three different organisms that I mentioned over here. Entamoeba histolytica, you have Giardia lumblia, you have Plasmodium falciparum. Three important organisms. Now, if we talk about multicellular endoparasites, you have helminths like Ascaris, you have Taenia solium, you have Fasciola hepatica. These are really, really important parasites, and they cause human diseases, human infections. Okay, so that's all about the endoparasites. Now let's move on to the next category, which is free living parasite. Another category, free living parasite. I hope it will interest you, because the name itself says it's free living, but the definition of parasite says that parasite should be inside the host, right? Free living parasite. So the point over here is the parasite is usually independent. It's not dependent on the host. So point is, it's independent. Let me write it down. The parasite is basically independent, but it can become parasitic under certain conditions if it enters inside the host, and then it lives the parasitic life, right? So in bracket, I mentioned that. Example is Naegleria fowleri. Okay, Naegleria fowleri. And that's really dangerous infection. It can cause in humans. Usually it's there in water. It's not causing any kind of harm. But if that enters inside the body, it's structure like this is the trophozoite. The next one, that's the cyst form. And the trophozoite can basically cause a lot of harm in the body, and the cyst can survive in the environmental condition, right? So it can cause some damage to your brain. Next is there are a range of parasites that we need to cover in this particular in this particular course. So we'll talk about those also. The next one is obligate parasite. So as you can see over here, we have another category which is obligate parasite. Obligate parasite is basically the parasite that requires host all the time. Example, Plasmodium, Toxoplasma gondii, the image you can see over here, it requires host for its survival. And then another thing is it has strong host adaptation. Strong, very, very strong host adaptation is there to survive inside the host, right? Example, if we talk about the example that I've already mentioned, that image one is the Plasmodium species, and multiple species of Plasmodiums. Plasmodium is there. Next you have, let me write it down, Plasmodium. Next you have Toxoplasma gondii. Really important parasite. The first one here, this is the Plasmodium. As you can see over here, the RBCs, and that's the parasite inside the RBC. And the second one is Toxoplasma gondii, and that's the parasite right over here. This one I'm showing with the arrow. Okay. All right. So that's the obligate parasite to you. Now let's move on to the another category, which is facultative parasite. So this is the facultative parasite, and we have already covered that previously, as well as in our future videos. We are going to cover that in detail. So facultative parasite is Naegleria fowleri. So Naegleria fowleri is damaging to brain. It lives in a free state. So facultative parasite means it is going to live in a free state, but under some condition, it can convert into parasitic stage, and then it can come back to the free living state. Right? So it's not obligate parasite, it's facultative parasite. Depending upon the environmental conditions, if the environmental conditions, they are changing, this parasite will change its nature. So example right over here is, again, I told you that Naegleria fowleri, it's also known as brain-eating amoeba. It can cause serious infections in our brain. So that's the facultative parasite for you. Next is accidental parasite. Really interesting term, accidental parasite, right? Accidentally, if an organism becomes parasitic, that's the parasite called accidental parasite. So let me write it down over here. As you can see, this is the host for this particular parasite, and human can also get infected accidentally, right? So it can create hydrated cyst in human liver, but the main host is dog in this case. Okay, Echinococcus granulosus. So what happens is accidentally it can infect hosts, the hosts that are not the typical host, right? That are not the part of its regular life cycle. So it's going to infect a host which is not the natural host, and then it can cause infection over there. Example is Echinococcus granulosus, and it can cause accidental parasitic infections in humans, and which is hydrated cyst in liver. So liver is basically the target organ. Because of this parasite, our liver can get damaged. As you can see over here, you can see structures in this image. So that's the damage to the liver that is happening, human liver that is happening because of this particular parasite, right? So this is known as accidental parasite. Now the next we have is another category of parasites, that is aberrant parasite. Really, really interesting category of parasites, aberrant parasite. It's also known as wandering parasite. Wandering parasite. So Toxocara canis is one of the example for that one. So what it can do is basically, if it enters inside a host, right? If it entered inside the host, it basically fails to actually complete its development. So that's why it's aberrant parasite. It will enter into somewhere else where it can't complete its life cycle stages or developmental stages. So it's not going to undergo complete development. So that's a no complete development, and it's going to die over there. So example is Toxocara canis. It's a wandering larva in human brain. Toxocara, let me write it down, canis. And in humans, what happens is this organism basically can cause damage to our brain. And that's the first one is the egg of this particular organism. And then as you can see over here in the brain, this parasite can reach and cause damage to the human body, right? So that is the parasite known as aberrant parasite. And the example I've already told you, Toxocara canis. Now, we need to also discuss some of the other categories, very, very important categories of these parasites. And those are the categories we'll study one by one. The first one is permanent parasites. There are parasites that can also become permanent and cause regular, continuous damage. Permanent parasites. These are strongly associated with the host, and let me write it down. Strongly associated with the host. Example is in the image you can see Ascaris, right? So what they do is, in most of their life cycle, they are associated with the host. So parasite will comfortably live and want to live with the host for its life cycle. And most of the helms, most of the worms, helminths, they are the parasites that are permanent parasites. One of the example is intestinal helminths like Ascaris lumbricoides, and you can see this worm over there in the image, right? It can cause damage in the host, and it can live inside the host comfortably to complete its entire life cycle. Next is temporary parasites. There is a term also, parasites that are temporary. So you can see, you can also understand with the name that it's not permanent, it's temporary. That means, it's not going to cause any damage, continuous damage. For example, mosquito. It's also known as the vector, right? It's going to take the blood meal and just leave you and then come back again. So temporarily, you are going to get damage from this particular parasite. It's going to visit the host and take the blood. So blood sucking mosquitoes, especially the Anopheles category, right? So they will move away. Rest of the time, they will move away from the host, but they will come back again and again to take the blood. So blood-sucking mosquitoes, and I can write it down, arthropods, right? Arthropods. So these are the categories of the organisms that can cause damage to the host by taking the blood. So as you can see over here, blood meal is going on with this mosquito. It's abdominal, you can see, filled with blood. Next is opportunistic parasites. Opportunistic parasite means parasites, they become highly opportunistic when they get the opportunity. So infection, basically not an healthy individual, but immunocompromised individuals. Immunocompromised individuals where the immune system is weak. So immunocompromised hosts are target of these parasites. Example is Cryptosporidium. As you can see over here, I'm showing you the image of Cryptosporidium. So I hope you will remember that opportunistic parasite as the parasite that will find opportunity. So these are the structures that you are seeing over here. In the stool sample, you're seeing Cryptosporidium oocysts, right? So it will cause damage. It will cause damage to the host, right? So that's the stool sample where you're seeing Cryptosporidium oocysts. So these are some of the important examples and important parasites that we need to cover in this the course, right? And this course will have interesting topics that we are going to cover one by one in future also. So please stay tuned. And right over here, we have completed the topic, which is parasites, history of parasitology, general terms that we use in parasitology. And now we are going to cover the host also, right, in the next module. So we will have all those organized modules in a specific structured way. So this is the introduction to the medical parasitology. I hope you will enjoy this particular course. You will cover all those topics slowly. I'm going to add more resources so that your learning experience becomes really, really good. And at the same time, in an interesting way, you also understand these topics very, very easily. Okay, so let's meet in the next module. And before we move on to the next module, please visit ResearchGoal. That is the website that I've created for you only, where we have a lot of courses, and those courses are research skill courses. If you are interested in doing research, these are the courses that you should complete. There are so many courses. I put the link in the description. Please visit the website. Let me know if you're interested in any course. We are also providing mentorship support for research work in the area of biosciences. Please do let me know if you have any doubts, and we'll meet in the next video. Okay, stay tuned. If you like the video, then please hit the like button and do post your comment, because if you post your comment, it tells us that we are doing good. And whatever we are doing, I hope it's going to help you in your exams. And we'll meet in the next video. We are going to continue with the topic. All right, see you in the next one.